Hi guys. So today I'm going to show you a couple Illustrator techniques for populating your drawings with art really quickly. And we're going to use two different methods. We're going to use some custom brushes in Illustrator, and then also going to use the blend tool. So this is a project that I've been working on. It's basically an indoor farming facility. Um, and so I have this production line with all these empty trays that I've generated in Rhino. Um, and there's a couple different stages of production that are being shown in this particular scene. And so what I want to do is I want to show the different areas where the production is happening. So what I've done is I've come down here and I've created a number of little artworks to depict different stages in production. So I have empty pots and full pots. I have these empty pots and these full pots that are covered, kind of like almost as if they'd be sitting down in the trays. And then pots that have plants in them, the baby plants themselves, the baby plants as plugs. So anyway, so I have a number of different little symbols that are corresponding to different moments in production, and I want to fill these trays with those different moments. So, what I could do is I could take this artwork that I have and copy it, and then I could paste it, pull it over here, blah, 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 paste it again, pull it over here, blah, blah, blah. It would take forever. So we're not going to do that. We're going to totally bypass that. And that we're going to do that by creating a brush. So I'm going to take this artwork here. What brushes allow us to do is they allow us to basically take a piece of artwork and distribute it across a line that we might draw. So I'm going to take this artwork here. I'm going to go to my brushes drop-down menu right here. You can see I've made some of these brushes in the past, and so I'll show you how to do that now. And I'm going to go to this menu here, and I'm going to click on New Brush. It's going to ask me which type of brush I want to make. So there's a few different types of brushes you can make in Illustrator, all of which can be helpful for different scenarios. So calligraphic brushes are good for making line work that might have tapered ends or might be fuzzy or crackly or something like that. Pattern brushes are good for creating artwork along line work that's sort of like stretched along line work. But what we really are interested in is the scatter brush. Scatter brushes allow us to take an icon and to distribute it out across a line repeatedly. So that's the one that we want. So we're going to click OK here. Let's go ahead and name it. We'll name it baby tobacco plant, which is what it is. It's a tobacco. There are a number of settings here, which we're going to come back to in just a second. But the one setting that we're going to do right now is the color setting. So if you want your brush, if you want this icon to always be the same color, then you would keep your colorization method at none. But if you want to be able to change the color, if I want to be able to make a red plan or a blue plan or something like that, just how I change the stroke color of any other thing, then you can use this colorization method. So you can choose the key color here. There's two different colors in the artwork I have right now. There's a dark green, and then there's this lighter green. I'm actually going to choose this line work, this lighter green. That's going to be the key color that is going to be used to change the color of the thing. And so there are a few different methods. So I can do tints, which just sort of like subtly changes the color, and tints and shades, which changes the color to be lighter or darker. And then there's this total hue shift, which actually changes the color completely. So from a full green to like a full red or something like that. So that's the one that I typically work with, and that's the one I'm going to use here. So I'm going to just go ahead and click OK. Oh, I already have this. Okay, tobacco plant, baby 2. Okay, so we have this new brush here that was created. So let's go over to our tray and let's draw a line here. Boom. And then let's go and let's change this line to have the brush that we just created right here. Great. Okay, so now you can see that this line has been filled with that artwork, which is great. Now, there's a number of things that we can do to change this. This looks maybe a little bit kind of computerized right now. Of course, this is a production facility, so things are evenly spaced, but maybe it looks a little too even. All the plants look exactly the same. So there are things we can do to change this up. So we can go back into our brush menu and double click on our brush that we made. So as I said before, there's a number of different settings that we can change here. The first is size, so I could go here and do a random size, and I could set this limit to be, maybe 70% or so to like 150%. We can click OK. It's going to ask us, do we want to apply this to the strokes that already exist, or if we want to leave those strokes. I'm just going to hit apply to the strokes that exist. And there we go. So now we have this random sizing that's going along the line from 70% to 150%. The next thing we could do would be to randomize the spacing. So we could do this tighter spacing, maybe like 60% up to 150 or something, and apply that. You can see, so we have some random spacing going on here now. These are much closer. These are much closer together than some of the other ones. We can change the scatter. I'm gonna actually just change these back real quick so you can see this better. So I'll change this back to 100, back to 100. Okay, so the scatter is the relationship of the artwork to the line that you've drawn. So if I do a random thing here, I could set this to be like -100, which would set things below the line, and then 100, which would set things above the line, and click OK. So now we have the scattering of the artwork along that line. And then the last thing we can do, and if you want, that's nice. So if you want different iterations, you can just come and re-click on this, and it will just go through different iterations until maybe you get one that looks kind of naturally like what you'd want. And then the last thing here, I'm going to change this back again, is rotation. So this is the one I'm going to use because I want the plants to all be the same size, and they are evenly spaced because they're in little holes in trays, but they're not all the same plant, so maybe I want them to be rotated just a little bit, just to kind of give that effect that they're different and they're going in different directions. So let's do like -30 to 30 or something like that. It'll just be a really subtle effect. But now all the plants don't look exactly the same. So that's maybe, just a tad more realistic. Okay, so we have one. So we could draw another line here. Fill this again. And we could go across this whole thing and fill this up. But there's a quicker way of doing that, of filling this up, or at least getting close, which is what I'll show you now. So what I'm going to do is, we're going to use the blend tool. So the blend tool allows us to take two groups of artwork within Illustrator and to create iterations between them that slowly change from one artwork to the next. It's a really, really powerful and useful tool. So I'll show you how to do it. So we're going to go here to this very end. We're going to create a line here. And we're going to change it to plants. Great. So we've got some plants there. Oops. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this line, and I'm going to go to Object, and then Blend, and then Make. And there you see. So it's made these blended lines for us. It's made a bunch of lines in the middle that that go from that blend from this here over here to this. So we can then go into Object and Blend and our blend options, and we can sort of fiddle with this. So there's a few options we have here. We have specified steps. You can see there's 8 steps in here right now. We could do a specified distance if we wanted to have things, half an inch spaced to each other, or we could do the smooth color, which is sort of this, it's just kind of algorithmically blends it. So I'm going to go back to the specified steps, but I'm going to add like, I don't know, 20 or something like that. And then this orientation thing, so if you have things that are blending along a curve or something, then you can change this orientation so that things either stay straight up and down, or they bend, or they rotate to fit the curve. So that's another thing that can happen. But I'm just going to click OK here. Okay, so that's at least gotten us closer, right? Like that was much faster than going through and drawing all those lines. So great. And then there are other things that blend can do, right? So it's not just blending the length of the line here, but I could actually go back to this far line here. Since it's farther in the distance, these plants would actually be smaller, right, when we're looking at it. So we could go and we can change this to something smaller. And you can see, so now this is blending to be smaller as we move farther back. We could also click on this and do, a color change, as I mentioned before, and do pink or something crazy like that. Okay, so now we have these plants that are sort of changing in this way, and this isn't really appropriate for this particular drawing, but maybe you wanted to like somehow convey seasonal change in one of your drawings and show a forest and that's sort of moving from spring into this magenta fall or something. That could be great, but I'm gonna actually go back and not do that. But that's another thing you could do. So there are there's a number of characteristics that blend will blend for you. So you can play around with those. So good. So we're pretty close here, and then the only really last thing we can do, let's click on our blend, which is this group right now. So these lines don't actually exist by themselves yet. They're sort of like in this limbo computation stage. The Illustrator is sort of like doing the math, but it hasn't really like officially created them. So we can click on our blend and we go to Object and then Blend, and we can expand this. Also, if you make a blend that you don't want, you can release it and then it will get rid of it. But we're gonna expand this. Great. And so now we have individual lines. They're still in a group. So I'll just, oh, hi Han. I'll just ungroup these, and then we can click on these individually and we can just start kind of refining where these are. I can get rid of that one, move this one up. So in the end, this is going to be much faster than drawing all those lines themselves. You might have to draw a few lines, but you don't have to draw them all. So it's a really quick way of populating things. And let's say we want to show some pots or something. So some stacked pots that are sitting or something. So I could draw a line here, change it to black or something. Let's see here. And then I could, well, I could make a new brush that's this empty pot here. So let's do that. New brush, new scatter brush. We'll just call it empty pot. And we'll have the spacing down pretty low. So let's say like 50 or something. And we'll click OK. And then we'll change this line up over here to the empty pot. And great. Perfect. So now we have these stacked pots, which is really great. And maybe we want to make them a little closer together. Let's do down like 20 or something. Great. Great. So now we have these stacked pots. We'll just set them up on this counter. Bada boom. So yeah. So those are some really easy ways of using blend and using custom brushes. to fill the spaces, and once you are done with that, you can end up with a scenario something like this. So I have these like very closely spaced plant brushes that I've done that are just the plants. I used a symbol with a pot with that was filled with a plant in it for these over here, and then pots without plants for these trays over here. And you know, these are just lines, so I did the exact same method. I drew a line here, and I drew a line here, and then I made a blend. And then I got some lines in between. So yeah, so it's a really useful tool. And you can think about a number of different scenarios where this could be helpful, right? So if you look at this here, this is something I made this semester as well, and this sort of like this is sort of this representation of seed dispersal, and so I did this just by using a scatter brush as well, and changing the scatter option and changing the size option to get this sort of random flow across the board. So yeah, and I did that by actually using a curved thing. So let me show you that here. So what we did before, right, is we had let's do this. We had artwork at one end, and then we had artwork at the other end. Change the color here. Great. Oops. Okay. So we have these two artworks, and then we clicked on them both, and we created a blend. Right? Great. Okay, but what if we want this blend to grow along this curved line? We would take our blend and click on it, and then click on this line, and we could go to Object, Blend, and then we will replace the spine. There. And so now we have our blend going along this curved line. So you can do that for any line that you draw. Another really quick, simple, easy way to make a blend, but a blend that's not necessarily just straight across. So I'm actually going to go back and get rid of these. But yeah, so here's another scenario. Let's say that we have some contours actually. Let's say we have just a few contours that are sort of representing this hillside, but we want to fill this entire hillside with plants. We want to show that it's getting covered with some species or something. So what we could do is we could kind of approximate the contours in between by clicking on these three and doing object and then a blend and make. Okay, great. So now we have these sort of approximated contours. This is never something you would want to do to actually show contours. You would always want to have your real contours. You should never let Illustrator draw these for you. But for the sake of just filling this space, this will be helpful for us. So then what we can do, we can click here on our lines, and we can change it to whatever brush we have. Here's some other brushes I was using, so we'll click on this plant here, and click on this middle line, and give it the plant. And then the last line, give it same thing. Great. So then we can use the blend techniques that we used before. We can click on this and maybe this is coming down the hill and this is the closest to us, so this obviously gets bigger. So maybe this is like 0.6 or something like that. And then we could go up to this, and this is kind of off in the distance, so maybe this is even a lighter color. This is more like that, or even that. Great. And so now we have this hill that's sort of populated with these plants, and we could go back. We could, there would obviously be different spacing here than there would be here. So maybe we could go and we could go up to Object in our blend and we could expand this. We could actually redo this in this top part. So maybe I actually get rid of these lines and redo this blend to have more. Object, blend options, and we could do double the amount or something. Right. So I mean, we didn't get that there. So that probably wasn't the best place to cut this, but you get the general idea. So now we have maybe this is a river or something. I don't know. But anyway, so now we have this hillside that's populated with these plants. We could go in and change the rotation of these plants, make it look a little bit more wild if we wanted. But for now, that's pretty good. So yeah, those are a few techniques. Oh, one other thing that's like super helpful just before I leave you guys is you can also use a brush in a singular fashion too. So I can have this brush on and just do a dot at a time and just fill this up. I can make this bigger. And so this is a really easy way, instead of copying and pasting artwork all over your board, to just place things exactly where you want. So that's another really good use of a brush. So yeah, so maybe we have this kind of scenario where these are, I don't know, windborne seeds or something, and they're going across the plane. And we can just illustrate that this way. Great, so now we have some sort of, I think, agricultural situation happening here along a hillside. So yeah, so really powerful tools, just using custom brushes in Blend. There's a lot of things you can do. That's it for today, and we'll see you next time.